I recently pushed past 1,000 corruption on last Epoch, and there's some things wrong with the game that I noticed along the way. For one, there's a lot of memory leaks that happen. They happen mostly in high density areas where there's lots of enemies, especially like archers, axe throwers, things like that. Any type of enemy that shoots projectiles from a distance. This, I think, could be remedied with some type of dynamic graphics scaling, but I also think it has to do with like the different calculations for the damage from the enemies and their different ailments they cause, all their different affixes and things that they have boosted because of the map, their animations, just all of that stuff in general. It could be graphical, but I think that it's part of the memory leak in the game where there's just a benefit even to resetting your game, closing out and restarting the game every like hour or two. The 1 or 2 shot deaths as you push higher corruption show issues with the hitboxes, your hitbox as well as the enemy hitbox, as well as timing and the telegraph of the enemy attacks. It also shows how traversal skills like shift sometimes don't save you even with invincibility. Sometimes you know you're dashing, but you still die. And that just shows there's some kind of lag, there's some type of delay going on. There's way more offensive tools than defense, despite having multiple different layers like damage reduction, glancing blow, crit strike avoidance, endurance, chance to block. You're forced into damage reduction eventually, and eventually even the health pool seems like it's irrelevant unless you're using a ward build with just thousands and thousands of ward, which really just goes higher than intended. Really, at the end of the day, the devs said they don't really intend us to be pushing into 4-digit corruption. So it's really just proven as you get further and further, like how I said earlier with the memory leak, with the game running just worse and worse performance the further you push, at least in my experience. But it seems like that is just more evidence that you're not supposed to push that far. Ward builds are just kind of able to get away with it. I know pushing higher corruption drops higher LP chance, but it doesn't feel like it's so much to justify the speed difference. You can't really play relaxed without a ward build, it doesn't feel like. Sometimes you die with prophecies on the ground. You really need a safe way to open your prophecies. You need to be able to complete them and then open it up in town so it spills on the ground. That's really a way that they could remedy it. I probably found a red ring by now, but it literally fell on the ground and I died from some shit in the middle of a big crowd right after that. I wasn't even trying to look at it. I was trying to survive, but maybe the fact that the unique item fell on the ground, I was slightly distracted because you have to play perfect at a certain point, it feels like. Your minions attack off-screen enemies, sometimes getting you killed while you're trying to check out some loot on the ground. This happens a whole lot and it's just honestly jarring and really annoying. I think during the Shade of Oribus fight, you need to be able to slightly zoom the camera out a little bit so you can see the full arena. So that way you can prevent getting one shot from off screen while you're dodging AoE attacks. That really would save a lot of Shades of Oribus for people as they're pushing higher corruption, because the fight really does get more and more challenging, and some of his attacks honestly need to be better telegraphed, especially like the one where he shoots out fire, or the one where he belches out poison. Sometimes that happens while you're in the middle of dodging all of his other attacks, and it just happens so suddenly. There's no like glowing green before the attack happens. It's just like it happens instantly, and the damage isn't like damage over time. It's like you just got hit by a truck, an anvil dropped on your head. I think it would be really cool if we could add new items that only drop at different corruption levels, like 300, 500, 700, maybe 1,000. Maybe like lower than that. Maybe it would be like 300 and then 500 and then 700 or something. Something just to add more chase and more meaning to pushing corruption. And it could also be items that could solve some of the defensive or offensive issues that get posed when you're pushing further corruption. I think until some of the previously mentioned memory leak issues get fixed, we need less ranged enemies, like density-wise, less axe throwers and archers. Those always without fail make my game stutter every single time. There's just like big packs of them, and they all have like pretty complex animations, and it's doing something with the game. I know that the Unity engine in general has issues with out of memory errors, so I think that's what's going on. I would look into that, especially with those particular areas. Another area of the game that almost always has problems for me is Ritual Lake. The specific map on Monolith nodes, Ritual Lake, always has issues. It's always laggy. It's always stuttering. One thing that I think pushing higher corruption really exposes is some of the maps are either super easy or super hard, simply based off the game performance that you're getting, which seems like it's being caused by the combination of mobs, whether that might be the axe throwers and those guys, or it could be other mobs and stuff with just particular combinations of VFX and stuff, like particular graphics that their attacks do, whatever. They maybe just don't work well together combined with the particular map that you happen to be on. And it just almost feels like something's just incompatible, and there's clearly, like, whether it's a memory leak or whatever's going on, something just makes that map feel like it's cursed almost. And then you go to the next node and everything's perfectly fine. And it could be the same exact, like, enemies have 18% increased damage and 18% increased health or whatever. That could be the modifier for the node. Overall, I've been having a blast with the game. I think I'm going to try to find the last unique items that I haven't found, which is Paranoia and Red Ring. Other than that, I might make a new character, or I might keep pushing further with my Falconer. I might make one new shorter version of the build guide or something for the Falconer, less rambly and everything. One other issue that I've seemed to notice as I've pushed further into corruption is simply the visibility of attacks and skills, such as like enemy AoE and stuff just getting basically buried underneath all the enemies, whether that's the enemy corpses or just the enemy mobs around you, whether that's the AoE attack itself just not being very visible, whether that's like the blood attacks from the winged carrion, I believe it's called. Certain ones of them are just kind of hard to predict, and they ruin your whole run. You're doing perfect up until that point, and then all of a sudden you die to something that you literally don't see. And it really, like, I understand at a certain point your gameplay with a certain character should come to an end, but it feels like it's exposing some of the design flaws as well. Just little decisions like the color of the enemy or the color of certain attacks that can one or two shot you at a certain point. That sounds a little bit nitpicky, and I would agree, and it really only becomes an issue once you push really high corruption, which is the whole topic of this video.